Right. Well, hello everyone. Dan here, Minnesota Watercolor Society January meeting. Just a few announcements to get us started. First of all, join us on Thursday, February 12th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on Zoom for a landscape demo, much like tonight, but with Young Hung Zong. So that's February 12th, second Thursday of February. All right. Spring exhibition, you should have got an email for this on January 26th. So that was a call for entry, but the actual date, as I mentioned, or no, I didn't mention that yet, did I? January 16th will be when the actual exhibition entries can be put in. And you should have got a an email about this. So remind everyone, let's see here. You need to be a current member in order to enter the show. So make sure you get your dues in if you haven't already. This is also a good time to talk about the new website, which hopefully you've taken a peek at right now. And a reminder that it would be to everyone's benefit to log in, and you should have been provided with some form of a login name and a password, but you should go in, change your login name, your ID to whatever you want it to be, and then change a password to something that you can remember. So please get that done as soon as you can. There's a lot of cool things on the new website. For example, you can build your own portfolio gallery type of situation, but you got to log in to do that. So please check that out soon. Now, if you have any issues with that, please reach out to webmaster@minnesotawatercolors.com. All right. And yeah, if you haven't heard back, email again. There's probably going to be a lot of emails as this is a new thing. So, all right, I think that's all I got. So I'm going to turn it over to
Okay.
Britt and Andy. Thank you.
Okay. So I will introduce Caitlin to everybody. Welcome, Caitlin. The Minnesota Watercolor Society is thrilled tonight to welcome Caitlin Leline Hatch as our demo artist. She will demonstrate a portrait of a black horse, showing her techniques using Daniel Smith Lunar Black watercolor paint. You can paint along with her or just watch and learn. She will also tell us about the projects she was involved with last year with Coors Beer and Wrangler jeans, where she actually painted with beer. This is going to be such a fun night. Caitlin is best known for her soulful, impressionistic watercolor paintings of animals, figures, and landscapes. She captures the interplay of light, shadow, and color and reveals the everyday magic all around us. She has been dedicated to watercolors for over 20 years, and her work has been selected into prestigious art exhibitions around the country, including the American Impressionistic Society, that's a long one, the National Watercolor Society, winning first place in 2024, the Transparent Watercolor Society of America, and the Northwest Watercolor Society's International Exhibit, winning first place in 2022. She is a native of Dork County, Wisconsin, and grew up there on a horse farm. Her childhood imprinted her with a specific sensitivity toward animals and the rural landscape. Today, she lives on her own dairy farm in Wisconsin's Driftless region, where her family raises cows, horses, and chickens and makes artisan cheese. You can see more about Caitlin on her website, lilineartstudio.com, and you can study with her if you want to through Terracotta Art School online. January 15th of this year, she will paint It's All About Fur, showing how to paint the fur texture of a poodle. And then again on Terracotta on the 24th and 25th of January, she will teach in the Animal Symposium series. So anyway, let's have fun watching Caitlin tonight. Take it away.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Andrea. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here tonight. I thought my demo I pre-recorded because my life has been a little crazy this holiday season, and I just wanted to make sure I had something ready for you. It's about a 25-minute demo, but what I thought I'd do first is go over my materials and just do a brief little fun sketch. You're welcome to do this along with me if you've got some of the granulating pigments. Daniel Smith has a line of granulating pigments. Lunar Black tends to be the one that's most granulating and really does some interesting, effects with the granulation. But it's fun to mix them with other colors that aren't granulating or some of the other granulating series. I have a few of them here, and they kind of vary in how much granulation they have. I thought, oh, and let's talk about the brushes here. This is Michael Soloyev's line of calligraphy and flat brushes. I really like these brushes because this calligraphy brush just has the weight of it is beautiful, and it makes beautiful long lines, and it's great for mark making and practicing your mark making, which is a big portion of what this demo is all about. A lot of mark making, and taking the color away from your work can really help you focus on shapes and value. This one in particular is almost more of a no-tan, just finding your darks and lights and then breaking up some of those shapes by creating a little bit of a mid-tone. But we'll talk about more about that later. And then Michael's flats, he's got about a 1 inch, I think this is 1.5, almost 2. And then I just bought this 3-inch size because I've been doing some much larger pieces. I just did a 4 by 5 foot piece and really needed a big brush. And what I love about these is that they're very soft, and you can do a lot of really beautiful blending and softening edges without disrupting the pigment too much or making a weird line or something that's not wanted. So I think they work really nicely for blending colors. So with that, let's just get started and be a little bit playful here. I love finding ways to break outside. The watercolor mind is intense because we have to think 10 steps ahead, and we have to be so focused on what we're doing, and there's not a lot of room for error. So when we have a moment to be playful and experiment, I'd say take it, because it really is fun to just let loose and not worry about the outcome and just explore what other possibilities are out there. You might learn something that you want to bring into your more, serious work. So I'm just going to take a scrap piece of paper here and just do a tiny demo before we get into the main demo. I sometimes will wet the front and back of my paper. Sometimes I'll just get parts of it wet, especially if that's the area that I want to put paint on, and leave some of my white highlights if I feel I need to keep the white of the paper for any reason. But the key to painting with this Lunar Black in particular is patience. And it's sometimes really hard to find patience, especially in my life. We're busy and it's just go, go, go. And so slowing down and letting the water have a voice and take time to let it sort of do its own thing is again, a kind of a meditative practice, and really good for me. So I'm just going to scribble. I'm going to find some interesting marks, some shapes, and just have fun with it. And I'm actually tilting the paper probably at like a 30-degree angle at the moment. And you can already see that the pigment's starting to separate from itself. And so with this process, I like to just start making more shapes and marks. And sometimes I like to just turn the paper and see if anything starts to come out from that scribbled mess. Maybe not right away, but usually something starts to take form and shape. And as I'm continuing to keep the paper tilted, I like to bring in my spray bottle, and I have this really great spray bottle that's so old, it's kind of junked up, so it doesn't spray an even mist, which is actually really great for this process because it just sends out sort of random droplets, which is kind of nice because some of them are stronger than others, while others are tinier. So it makes it more interesting than just a general even mist over it. So here's where the patience comes in. I really want to go in and start messing with it, but I know that if I just sit here and wait, something interesting is probably going to happen. But if I were to go in and start fussing with it, I'm going to mess it up, and I'm just going to have to prolong that patient waiting game. So for those of you who struggle with patience, as I do, so I'll put on some music while I do this. I'll make myself a cup of tea, and I'll just let this sit here, and I'll think of maybe like have a notebook and write. If things come up in your mind, sometimes, as you know, those of you who practice meditation, your busy monkey mind can come in. So I'll make notes of things that pop up and then let that go and know that that's there now. I won't forget about it, and just focus on my breathing. Now, all of a sudden, there's something really interesting happening here. And so I can really appreciate the effect that's happening. So there's that 1 minute, 30-second meditation. And I'll just quick show you, I experimented with adding, this is a permanent alizarin that I mixed with the black. And what I like about that is the black granulating pigment pushes some of that out of the way and allows the permanent alizarin to come through. I tried it on a piece of scrap paper that I had put a wash on, and to see what would happen there. And while the granulating pigment of the Lunar Black does separate, it's not pushing this already dried wash out of the way. So it's nice if you would want to have like a toned background, and maybe not have as much, separation of the two pigments happening. So again, thinking about what you might want to use this for a certain technique. Probably really great for landscapes or buildings. A lot of really interesting textures that happen. And then here, this is a piece I did last year. I actually painted this whole piece upside down on an angle, on a pretty severe angle, like a 60-degree angle. And all of the white here, I just, kept dropping water in and letting the water have a voice. And I started seeing trees. And so I kind of brought out a few of those branches. And then when I turned it around, it was really surprising because all this granulation that happened, it actually looked like pine trees in a dark, forest in the evening. And so you just never know what's going to happen. So having that patience and allowing the water and the pigment to have a voice and not try to be in total control can create these really interesting effects that, I could never replicate that again. It just happened. But I find that process really beautiful. All right. So I think that's.
Hey, Caitlin, we got one question.
Yes.
Someone asked, would lunar black be appropriate for reflections on a concrete floor?
Sure. Yeah. I honestly think you could get away with just about anything. Coming back to this painting, there's this really interesting texture in the foreground grass. And I kind of thought about it as like a snowy scene and put some tracks in the snow. But I think you could definitely get away with a softer, lighter wash, and kind of create that reflective concept. You're going to have to play with your lights and darks to create, like you would with any reflective surface, how much dark you're going to surround it by to make it the value change happen so that it looks like a reflected surface.
Okay, thanks. And what type of paper are you using?
Sure. I think you could probably experiment with whatever scraps you have around and see what you like the most. I use Lawn Aquarella for all of my work, so that's just what I have. It's a really soft, 100% cotton, and it has a little bit of a texture to it, which, it is cold pressed, 140 pound. I think if you used a rough, pressed, you probably get more of that granulating happening. So honestly, because this is experimental, whatever you've got in your studio, give it a try and see what happens. Can't go wrong. All right. And then Britt, if you're able to start the video, we can go on with the demo.
Okay. All right, there you go.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I have just the really rough little sketch of this horse's head. And the paper is totally dry. And I'm just wetting the areas where I see the darkest values on the horse's face, just to give me a little bit of movement. I don't want to be working on completely dry paper, but I do want to keep some white areas dry so that I don't accidentally lose the whites, because as we all know, once you lose your whites, you really can never get them back. So I'm just trying to, the whole idea here is for me was to feel the form of the horse and take away all the color. And it was easy since this is basically a black horse, and it's kind of just a black and white photo almost. But I really wanted to practice my mark making. I wanted to think about the shapes. And so this was a great exercise for me to just let go of creating a masterpiece, if you will, and just have fun and really force myself to think a little bit differently than I normally do when I'm painting. So I'm just dropping in some of my darks here. I'm glancing at my reference photo just to kind of keep me on track, but I'm also really focused on and paying attention to what's happening on the paper. So this calligraphy brush is great if you splay the bristles. It makes really nice little wispy strands of hair. So that was nice for the little forelock on the horse to just break that up. And since the paper is dry, it had some nice dry texture to it. So I'm filling in. I already filled that ear on the right. I put too much pigment. There's a lot of light reflecting on that ear, and I already know in my head that I messed that up, but I'm not worried about it. This pigment is super forgiving. You can reactivate it over and over again and keep messing with it, and it's not going to look overworked. So don't be scared to make mistakes. You can always use your spray bottle. Spray bottle is my best friend, and break up that space, reactivate the paint, get it wet again, and move the pigment around. So I'm using I'm fresh paint right out of the tube, so it's nice and thick. And so I'm now thinking about sculpting this horse's face. I have a love affair with horses, and I love thinking about the different planes of their face and the different angles of their bone structure. And so I'm really more focused on just this mark making concept and feeling my way through this horse's face without being too specific. You can see there's puddles of water in some areas, and I'm just letting the water do whatever it wants to do, keeping a few highlights on the bridle and the edge of that nose there. I don't want to lose all of my whites. So again, really focusing on these brush strokes, the marks, filling in that front of the face on that dark plane. And there's on the photo, it's like a big black shape, and I don't want to just have a big black shape. I really want to think about the form of the horse's face. And I know that there are several planes of the turning light that happen. So I'm now just conceptually thinking about how light would be hitting this horse. Even in the shadow, you're going to see some plane changes. And my board right now is at sort of just a slight angle. So there's a little bit of movement happening, but not a lot. But you'll see as we go along that I actually pick the paper up and give it a much more significant angle for the water to start moving around on. But at the moment, I'm just focused on, my focal point is the face. So I want to make sure that I'm creating some interesting marks and keeping the whites kind of negative painting here, keeping those white moments of light on the bridle just to give it some structure and help create that story. Again, I'm thinking about what the horse's structure of his face looks like. There's nothing for me to really see in the photo, but I know that I want to create some depth in that face, even though it's in shadow. And again, here, this is just using that calligraphy brush and seeing what happens when you hit dry paper versus when you hit the paper that's got a little bit of water on it. What's changing, what's happening. And then using the flat brush, I'm again just pre-wetting the area that is my darkest darks. And switching back to the calligraphy brush, I love kind of rolling that brush as you move along, creates a beautiful line that's you know, it's not, it's free and it's not restrained. And so there's this, all of a sudden, this beautiful sort of edge of that mane because the brush was hitting dry paper. And I was kind of rolling and twisting the brush as I moved along.
Caitlin, can you say one more time out loud the name and type of paint?
Sure. This is just Daniel Smith's Lunar Black. I'm just using the one color. It's very heavily granulating, so it creates really interesting effects when there's just the right amount of water touching it. It will separate the pigment from the water. So again, you're just gonna have to experiment and play. Like, how much of that separation do you want? How much of the story are you telling with solid pigment? How much do you want it, all of some of these lines to be broken edges? I think it's really important to think about line, even though we're creating form. There's, you know, the foundations of art, you know, there's line, there's form, there's value, there's color. And for me, I never like to see one big long line or one big solid shape. I want to always break that up. It's going to be more interesting. I'm either going to switch my colors a lot and add a little bit of that beautiful transparency of watercolor comes through, and when you have the subtle shifts of color, or I'm going to break up these lines so it's not just a solid line by, you know, you'll see here in a minute that line going through the neck. While it's interesting and it's not totally straight, for me, it's catching my attention too much. And I don't want to, I want my face, my focus to be on the horse's head, not that big white line that just cut his neck in half. Here, these lines of the bridle in my photo reference is pretty straight and static, but you know, horses are moving all the time. So by creating sort of an uneven, jagged edge to the bridle or the reins under the chin, for me, that creates a sense of movement, and movement creates emotion for me. So I'm always thinking about how can I create more movement and more emotion in my paintings. So everything here is a little bit tight and static in the neck, like big shapes that are solid, but I'm right now just trying to cover all of the white. I'm flicking my eye constantly back to my focal point because the water is still moving and I want to keep an eye on it. You can actually see there's a little bit of water that strayed across, like just under where the eyes would be, but I actually love what happened there. It almost looks like piece of hair is, you know, the wind is blowing the hair. So I'm not going to touch that. I really love, and that was random. That just happened. I don't, probably from the spray bottle. So you constantly have to be, you know, focusing on what you're doing, but also flicking your eye around the page and seeing what's happening. And here I just broke that white rein that was cutting the horse's neck in half. I put a brush stroke through that to break that up. And now for me, now that feels like there's even more movement and it doesn't draw my attention as much to that area on the neck, and my focus will go back onto the horse's face. And here I'm really trying to feel the muscles and the movement of the fur or the hair on the horse's neck. So now I'm tipping the paper sort of on a diagonal, so everything is moving toward that bottom left corner, because I want to make sure that the water is moving in the same direction as the motion of the horse's neck that's arching. So as you can see, there's a little bit of water starting to separate on the horse's upper neck. And I'm loving that it's moving in the direction that the muscle structure is moving. So that creates that rounding sort of feel of the horse's neck arching. And down in the bottom left, it's still muddy, it's flat, it's not very interesting. So I keep putting paint on, then I keep spritzing it with my water bottle because I want to break up that big shape that feels really not exciting yet. So again, just being super playful, adding pigment, taking pigment away, put it back on, take it off, until you find, an area that's working, then leave it alone and move on to that next area. But this has allowed, some shapes to happen and some light to, I'm trying to capture that little bit of light that is reflecting on the horse's neck. I keep adding a little bit of darker value to the mane, just because this pigment also will sort of dissolve and you lose a lot of what you've done. So it can be sometimes a little bit frustrating if you like something and then it all of a sudden disappears on you. At this point, the paper is getting wetter on the front, and so I need to spray the back of the paper just to help it settle and not start curling on me. So I just gave it a little bit of a spritz on the back. And now I'm going to wet the white of the background here just to kind of, again, help the paper settle and flatten because I don't want to be painting on curled up paper.
Caitlin, is it 140 pound?
It is 140 pound, yes. I always paint on that. So as I'm wetting the paper here, it's also giving me a time to kind of step back a little bit and look at the piece as a whole and ask myself what's working, what's not working. I really love what's happening in the mane and the neck, and I love what's happening in like the eye and the cheek and nose area. What I'm not happy about is that far right ear. It's like just a big black blob, looks kind of like a horn or something, and it's not reading well, and it's really, my eye can't get off of it, and I'm, at this moment totally annoyed at it. So I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do with that shape and how I'm going to resolve that because it looks messy and it's again a big dark shape is less interesting than a broken shape. I need to break that shape up somehow. So I definitely don't want water to run down into the forehead of the horse because I love what's happening there. I love that little bit of mane that's kind of crossing over right under the eye where the eyes would be. I really don't want to lose that. So I'm probably going to just add some water to that ear and reactivate the paint so that I can start moving it around again. And I also don't like that the forelock of the horse, the hair, between the ears feels messy and incomplete and a little bit like I need to give it a little more volume. And there's another place that I don't like, and that's the left ear, where the tip of the left ear and the tip of the mane, they almost meet. It's almost like a bad tangent. And I can't decide if I should make the ear taller, because in the photo, the ear goes a little higher than the mane, or what I need to do to resolve that. So here I'm putting a little bit more water on that ear, and I'm blotting some of the excess water because I don't want it to flow into that other ear because I think that's reading well. I can kind of feel the form of the ear turning. But I wanna let the pigment kind of absorb that water again and start to be a little more fluid again. And now I'm tipping the paper toward the top left. I want to keep the water from flowing down into the horse's face. So I'm keeping the paper tipped probably at a 45 or 50 degree angle here so that it runs away from me. I'm going to just drop some pigment in there, kind of see if that helps break up the first layer that I had on there. And again, this is where the patience comes in because, it'd be easy just to kind of scribble on it and mess around. But one little drop of water with a severe angle can actually do a lot with this pigment in particular. It really can bust through some of these big shapes or lines that you won't need to break up. But it does require a bit of patience. The longer you wait, the more interesting things will happen. And if it doesn't, then you can re-wet it and try again. So it did break up that ear a little bit, but it's still not working for me.
Caitlin, do you ever do lifting with the paper towel?
Not usually. I'll lift sometimes with a flat. If you can see my other screen, I'm not sure you can, but I'll show you afterwards. I have like a flat angle brush, and sometimes if I need like a sharp line to lift up, I will lift with a brush, but I really don't use paper towel for anything other than blotting my brushes. So here I'm thinking, well, maybe if I make that ear a little taller, it'll read better. And maybe, but I all of a sudden feel like now I've lost the ear, and it's hard to tell what's ear and what's mane. Now it looks like it's a little too long and too stiff. So here I'm gonna lift that back off actually. And so this is a very forgiving paint, as I mentioned before. And so I can just with a clean brush, and I would wipe it off with every stroke. I'm gonna actually take that back off because I don't like what I just did. Again, little by little, I want to be really careful not to lift anything that I don't want to lose, because I liked that little point on the mane. But I'm just cleaning my brush off and kind of drying it off so it's like a more of a thirsty brush, and it will pick up some of that pigment and water. But it's not a staining pigment, so which is lucky. So it does pick up quite easily. But now I'm stuck here again with this weird line right there separating the ear and the mane, and I'm not sure what to do with it yet, but something has to happen. Just giving it a little flick back away from the ear to create a sense of movement and the hair sort of moving away from the ears. Splaying those bristles gives it that little bit of random feel to it. So it's not, I'm not painting every hair. I'm just letting the brush kind of do its thing and make it happen for me. But that still doesn't quite make sense when I'm looking at it from a distance. So now I'm giving the whole thing a little bit of a spritz with my continuous spray bottle, because it's starting to dry, and I don't want everything to get too dry. I want to still be able to push and pull the pigment around. So now I'm realizing I need to continue the rest of the head and the neck between the ears, because it just looks like it was missing. Didn't really like those brush strokes. I'm going to wet that area and then pick that up and clean it up again. So making mistakes with this pigment is your friend. It does lift so easily. So it's good to make, a choice and then realize, you can make a different choice. But I've just now added quite a bit of water to the paper right there. So my paper is now angled back toward me, kind of at that 20 to 30 degree angle. So as we go, it's slowly starting to seep into that forelock, which is now kind of breaking up the space going, into that forelock that was part of the problem with the ear, and the forelock was all one big massive shape. I keep splaying the brush, and I keep making marks to see what might work and how am I going to resolve this problem area. and I had a lot of water, so I could tell that there was water seeping up, and I didn't want to have any pigment touch that and then all of a sudden shoot up into the background. I'm gonna spritz the top of that with my spray bottle again, because I'm starting to like the idea of like this mane is all with the forelock, starting to evolve and come out. And I'm gonna actually flick the paper with a wet finger and get even more water in that spot and let the water do the work, since I'm struggling to make it work. Oops. Again, luckily it is non-staining, so easy to clean up a mess. So now I can start to play with the concept of, hair and mane coming through the ears and breaking that shape up that was really starting to bother me. This is where you take those meditative breaths and let the water do the work. Try not to mess with it too much, but keeping it on a severe angle and letting the water flow is the true key to this pigment. The paper is kind of wet now, so I'm trying really hard for it to not escape the edges of the face of the horse, because I don't want to lose that. Displaying those bristles again and creating that little bit of movement. Even though it's not really in the photo, I felt like I needed to break that edge up because it was too much of the same. And now I'm starting to feel like there's something, I've broken up the shape of that ear and the top of the forehead, and now it's starting to look a little bit more believable. I'm actually here's where I take that angular brush and I'm actually picking up just the edge of that triangle to reshape that nostril so that it wasn't just a flat triangle. Softening the edge just the tiniest of bit so it's doesn't look totally cut out. So I think a lot about edges when I'm working. My main focus is edges and form. I don't really care about the colors if I'm getting the values right. The color, if it's close, I'm usually happy with it. But I really, really focus on my edges and thinking about how light is hitting the subject, and so creating that sense of form. I'm stepping back, taking a look over the whole thing, and I'm feeling much happier about how I resolved that ear and that forelock. So I believe that's the end of the demo.
Yep, I think so.
Okay, cool. So any questions about the process?
I think for me, it seems like it's negative painting to the high degree. Do you
It certainly
feel
can
that?
be. Yeah, I definitely there are aspects where it definitely is a negative painting, especially when you're trying to paint around those lights.
Yes.
But then there are times where I'm really focused on form and adding paint and trying to keep that paint, and that form happening. So yeah, I think you could take it either way, and you could certainly take it to the extreme, I think, with the negative painting, which would be fun too, to, just do a big no tan and then use your spray bottle and break up all those shapes and see what happens.
I think I was trying to paint along with you. It was hard that I had a drawing I put on there, but then once I put the black on it, it covered up with my pencil and I kind of lost the drawing.
Yeah. So that's another good exercise, is to, do a simple drawing, and then, like you said, it will disappear. This pigment in particular will completely erase all your pencil marks. Some, with a lot of other watercolor, you can still see your pencil marks, kind of faintly underneath. This one kind of dissolves that graphite. So that's why I like to use that calligraphy pen brush first, to kind of map in important lines that I don't want to lose, so that I have something to work off of.
Caitlin, do you ever mix in other colors with the black before you paint, or?
Yeah, so again, definitely depends. I did a little experiment here. I don't know if you can see the other screen I have, but I mixed in like a permanent alizarin just to kind of see what would happen. And I liked, it definitely plays with the other colors. This was a little demo I did at our fall art crawl. I had like 2 minutes to capture people's attention. So in the sky, I used the Lunar Black, and I probably used just whatever blues were on my palette. Definitely French ultramarine, which is a granulating pigment, so it kind of helps the cause there. And then I actually put a wash of probably a yellow ochre of some sort, or raw sienna mix, down first, and then added some of the Lunar Black on top of that. And it was really just to kind of see what's going to happen. And, some of these little, effects, started making me think about rocks or roots happening, or moss. So it definitely lends itself to a very sort of natural, organic subject matter. But yeah, I think you can mix it with any color you want, and just kind of see what happens.
Caitlin, when you said you did a wash in that last example that you showed, did you let that dry and then went back with the
No,
black?
that was all within a couple moments of it.
Okay.
So for example, this is the Bloodstone Genuine. So I'll just put, a wash here, maybe add a little of this permanent alizarin just to give it some color. So here's my quick wash, and then adding this Lunar Black and just dropping in some of that. And again, here we go with trying to be patient. I'm going to put 1 drop of water in there just to give it some movement. And I'm going to hold it at an angle. And this is like the moment where I'm like, oh, I want to do something with it, because I don't like what's happening, because it's not interesting yet. But this is when you just have to like sit and wait and, look at your notebook and write whatever it is that you're thinking down or something.
Do you ever turn it?
Yep, you can turn it. You can turn it, and there's this pool of water happening. So maybe you even turn it sideways and upside down and let it run the other way, because that line was really unpleasant. And now it's breaking up that shape that's too static and the same. And now I'm actually going to not move it anymore, because this is where you just have to sit and wait. So while I'll prop this up and let it sit and wait, and then can come back to that and see if anything interesting happened. But in the meantime, if you would like, I think we've got a little bit of time left, so I'd be happy to take you on a quick little studio tour and show you the prints that I have of my Coors Wrangler collaboration that I did, if you'd like.
Yeah, we'd love that.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna turn this video off. and then take my phone. Excuse me. Oops. Oh. All right. Okay. So this is my little workspace in front of my picture window that in the daytime I can actually see our dairy farm with the creamery and the barn and the cows out my window. And then I've got a lot of movable on wheels storage units, which is nice because if I want to bring people in or move my space around, everything's on wheels. So I don't have to feel like anything's permanent. I've got a lot of storage space now for my frames and gator board and boxes, flat file drawers for all my paper and finished pieces. And then I do all my own framing. So I've got my glass and matte cutters. I dabble in oil. Just recently started doing that. So I want to do more painting from life. So I have a skull of a deer that my husband got many years ago and we buried so that I could have something to a pretty still life. So I've been working on learning how to mix oils and draw and paint from life with oils because I feel like going outside with watercolor for me is just way too stressful. And then I've got the horses out the window here, keeping cozy in this winter weather. So that's sort of the studio where I do all my work. And then
Do you ever do classes there?
Not yet. I have ideas of having classes probably once the kids are out of the house and I can dedicate a little bit more time to hosting people. But I will show you, I do have a little bit of a fun space for hosting. So this is the mudroom, and this is where I have my Coors Wrangler pieces hung up. So I did paint 5 pieces for them, all painted with the Coors banquet beer. And I was able to use raw sienna, burnt sienna, and sepia to tint the beer because it's a very light beer. So it would be a very, uninteresting piece of work if I could only use beer, since there's really no value. But instead of using water, I use beer. It did make for a very sticky experience. My brushes did not like it. And the paper, after a while, I had to be really careful not to overwork areas because the beer would start to dry and get sticky. So that was kind of gross. And my whole studio smelled like a bar.
So you use beer and no water
Correct.
and Lunar Black?
No, this
Oh.
is not Lunar Black. This is
Oh.
Winsor Newton's sepia, QOR raw sienna, and Winsor Newton burnt sienna.
Do they still smell like beer?
No, no. Luckily, once they dried, they seem to be, undetectable. So that was a pretty wild and crazy experience.
How did you come up with the inspiration images? Did you mention that?
No, so they approached me in June and they needed all of this done by August. So they came up with the concept, like they came up with the designs. They had to be approved by like 3 different teams. And so I was like, look, if you need this done now, like you need to give me exactly what you want because I don't want to put in all this hard work and then have you be like, no, could you change this or that? Like my life is busy enough and your timeline is super short. So they came up with the concept and ideas and then I executed it for them. And then I've got a little gallery space in here so I could host, do a little lunch and host people and I could change this whole room up and have tables in here to host workshops, but that's a few years out yet. Here is one of my bigger pieces. This is a 3 by 4 feet. I don't frame with glass, so I actually glue, once I'm done painting, I glue the paper onto Gator board, and then I spray it with a UV archival varnish, and then I put a cold wax over that, so it's protected from the sun and from any moisture that might be in the air. And then I've got some pieces up here, and this was, excuse me, another piece that I did with the Lunar Black that we just did.
Oh.
So here you can see, you know, it's a bigger piece, so I really tried to let a lot of the water.
Uh-oh.
Oh, there I am. And then for the men, I didn't want that big black shape to be, you know, solid. So I actually turned the paper sideways and let it all drip away. So it looked like there was movement happening. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, so this is there's a yearly annual fall art tour, so people can come I think from Baraboo all the way down to Mineral Point, and visit different artists' studios, and you can see them doing demos over the course of 3 days. So I like to have that set up for people to come in and see work up on the wall. And then they can come into the studio and see me working and ask questions and see where all the magic happens.
That's fabulous.
Thank you. All right. So are there any other questions?
How did you come about to get the project with Coors? How did that happen?
Sort of a funny story. It started with an email that I thought was spam because it, you know, came from somebody other than Coors, and I was like, yeah, you know, I'm there's so many scam emails out there. I'm sure you all get them, and it's, you know, you never know what's real and what's not. But since they mentioned Coors and Wrangler, it's like those are some pretty big companies. Like I maybe should look into this just because, you know, it'd be pretty bold for some scam email person to use big brand names like that. So I have family in Chicago who are in the marketing world, and the email came from a big firm in Chicago. And they said, oh yeah, that's the real deal. So I was like, okay, I guess I should respond to this email. So I think I actually took it out of the spam folder and sent a letter back saying I'd be interested to hear more about it. And we set up a Zoom, and I met with the creative team, and it was clear from the get-go that my style really meshed well with their vision of what they were hoping to do. And so we just took off from there. And so that was mid-June, and they wanted the work by like early mid-August. But they actually didn't get me any images to work from until the 4th of July weekend. And then they flew me to Texas for 3 days to do a video ad for their campaign. So I was actually painting on a vertical easel in a dark arena with a spotlight over me. So talking about not being able to see your pencil work, like I couldn't see anything. But luckily it was all, you know, the magic of videography, if that's how you say that. They were able to make it look beautiful with me kind of just throwing paint around and hoping for the best. So all in all, I actually only had about 2 weeks minus the 3 days in Texas to do the 5 paintings, because they bumped their timeline up, and anyways, it was wild. But everybody was amazing and super supportive and encouraging, and made it as easy as they could for me.
Those paintings are beautiful.
Thank you.
We have a couple more questions. Someone asked, have you studied Sumi E? It looks like it.
That's nice. Thank you. No, I haven't. But I have definitely I'm inspired by a lot of Eastern European and Asian art. It's always been a big influence on me, and I try to study different, ideas from all over the world. But yeah, I don't know where that comes from, but I appreciate it.
Another question, what brand of archival spray do you use?
I can probably grab it here and show you. So the watercolor artist, Brianne Brown, does a lot of this. And so I actually learned off of her. She's like a free video tutorial on her website. So this is, I do the exact same process that she does. It's Krylon's UV archival. There's a matte and a gloss, and you do a combination of both. I think it's the gloss first because the matte on the darks can sometimes leave like a whitish film. But if you do that, don't worry, because if you put the gloss over it, it kills that and brings your darks back to life. So I'll do several coats of each of those, letting them dry in between. And then there's two different varnishes, and Brianne explains that on her website. I don't like the liquid varnish because it almost makes it look plasticky or like an acrylic. Has a sheen to it that I really don't enjoy. So I just do the cold wax, which is that like Doorland. I think it's Doorland's cold wax. And I get that, and that you can move around and like make sure you like, the finish or the texture that you have on it. Or the paper towel leaves kind of like a brush stroke mark. So I make sure that I try to really smooth that out, or I'm happy with the movement or the direction of that, how the wax is moving, so that it enhances the artwork. But it's a softer, sort of more of like an eggshell matte finish that I like.
And is that type of treatment on your paintings something that is admitted for like competitions and things like that?
No, so definitely don't do that if you're going to put it your artwork, especially on some of the competitions like the Transparent Watercolor Society would be a huge no-no. And once you put it on, there's probably some way to take it off, but I definitely don't know that process. So I do this just for the galleries that I'm in that specifically don't want to be framing with glass. I've got a gallery out in New Mexico, and they have clients with big windows and lots of sun year round. And so any reflective surface, even the museum glass and the museum plexiglass, still has a little bit of a reflection if the light's just right. So I do that for them. But otherwise, no.
And what size were the 5 pieces that became billboards?
They were, the prints were 18 by 24, but the actual paintings were like 19 by 26. And there was some miscommunication through all the channels. And so I had to scale the images up to be, to make sense with what photos they sent me. But I didn't realize that they were going to make 18 by 24 posters. So then they had to crop the paintings to, for the posters. And it ended up working out, but I was like, oh, hindsight. But I think the 19 by 26 was the nicer composition. And, I don't like the traditional sizes. All my work is usually random odd sizes. But I understand for making prints and convenience for people, having a standard size was what they needed.
So did they take those prints then and sell them in their company stores or anything?
Yeah. The originals went to like the Coors headquarters or Hall of Fame, I believe. So those are hanging in somebody's office or hallway. And then they made 40 G clay prints of No, I'm still not, I'm not muted, sorry. They made 40 giclée prints of each of the 5 posters. And then at the release, I think they were going to release 2 prints of each painting every business day over the course of 2 weeks. And again, I've never worked in the commercial business, so I didn't know, what questions to ask and what to ask for up front. And I wanted a print of each poster, and they were already on to the next thing. So I actually had to get online, like eBay style, and try to type in all my information so I could buy a print of each painting I did. And they all sold out every day within 3 minutes. So luckily, since I had the first day, I was in the know, and I got 4 out of the 5 within those 3 minutes. And then the next day, I was like having a heart attack trying to get the last one.
Oh my gosh.
But it makes for a funny story.
Maybe they'll have you back to do it again in another year.
Yeah, maybe.
Mhm.
All right. Does anybody have any other questions? Well, we've got Caitlin here. We're seeing lots of really nice comments from people. They really enjoyed the demo.
Great, wonderful. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I hope it gives you the courage to go play and just experiment, see what happens.
Does Daniel Smith have other lunar colors that do the granulating similar to the black?
Yeah, they have a whole line of granulating colors.
Okay.
Another one that I really like is, I think it's called Tundra. And it's pretty granulating, and what I love about it is that it separates into 2 colors. So rather than having maybe a boring black, I like black, but it's like a beautiful violet and an orange, and so and you have no idea how it's going to separate. So it's really fun to have that. It's just one pigment, but it separates into 2 colors. So that's a really fun one to play with. And I'll try to. I'm not sure where it is, but I will send an email with that name, and you could maybe add it to your
List.
Yeah.
I might have to buy that one. Will you send us a copy of your finished painting so we can post it?
Oh, sure. Yeah, happy to do so.
Great, thank you.
Great. All right. Well, unless anyone has any other questions, we're just getting a lot of comments. Everyone's very inspired, and a lot of people are going to be getting this paint and trying this out.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Great. All right, Andrea, anything else from you?
No, it was great. This was a lot of fun. I tried painting with it and I got so far, but I'll have to do it again.
Yeah. It's good when you have your own time and you're not trying to keep up, because it's so spontaneous and you're just reacting to what's happening on the paper. So it's kind of a hard demo to follow along with.
It sure did flow fast when you tilted the paper.
Yes, indeed.
Well, thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Caitlin.
Okay.
Yes, you have a good night, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay,
Take care,
bye.
everybody. Bye, Caitlin.